There are names that, simply by mentioning them, bring back a flood of memories. Cliff Richard, that singer with the gentle smile and warm voice, was once a symbol of purity, the boy next door loved by millions of Britons and fans across the world. He was not just an artist, but an indispensable part of countless generations' youth, bringing joyful, optimistic melodies and a flawless image. For over 6 decades, Cliff Richard seemed to live a dream life, enveloped by the stage's glamour and the public's boundless affection. However, few know that behind that radiant exterior lay a shocking truth, a terrifying storm that suddenly struck and tore everything apart. A tragedy turned the dream into a nightmare, plunging a legend into a whirlpool of suspicion, judgment, and ultimate pain. Cliff Richard's story doesn't just encompass resounding successes, but also a heartbreaking tragedy, revealing a sad ending that forever altered his life and his image in the public eye. Let's lift the veil on the truth, to see that even the brightest stars can be consumed by darkness, and sometimes the most painful thing isn't the end, but how it ends. The pinnacle of glory and the throne of British music. For decades, the name Cliff Richard was synonymous with resounding success and a rare, impeccable image in the entertainment world. He emerged in the late 1950s, a time when British music was exploding, and quickly established himself as a force to be reckoned with. With his energetic performing style, bouncy hair, and charming smile, Cliff was dubbed Britain's Elvis, creating a fervent craze among the youth. Early hits like Move It, Living Doll, and Traveling Light propelled him to stardom in an instant, constantly topping the charts and becoming an idol for millions of teenage girls. Cliff Richard's career was not a fleeting flash in the pan, but an impressively enduring journey. He continuously adapted to changing musical trends, transitioning from lively rock and roll to lyrical pop ballads, then to energetic disco and even classic Christmas songs. This helped him maintain his appeal across generations, from his loyal fans of the 60s to younger audiences. A string of platinum albums, countless prestigious awards, and dozens of top 10 singles firmly cemented his position in British and international music. Not limiting himself to music, Cliff Richard also achieved success in many other fields. He acted in films, appeared frequently on television, and was a familiar face at major charity events. His image was always associated with positivity, wholesomeness, and deep Christian faith, creating a trustworthy and respected brand. His knighthood by Queen Elizabeth II in 1995 was the clearest testament to his immense contributions and widespread influence on British culture. Cliff Richard's musical throne seemed so unshakable that nothing could disturb it, and his life, in the public eye, was a modern fairy tale of success, talent, and dedication. But that was only half the story. The shocking truth that shook the throne. In August 2014, a terrible seismic shift occurred, not a jolt across the television screen, but a cold knife thrust straight into the hearts of millions of fans worldwide. The entire UK and all who had cherished his music fell silent when the BBC broadcast live images of police raiding and searching Cliff Richard's Berkshire villa. It was an unprecedented spectacle, a painfully naked exposure of an icon's life to global scrutiny. That moment, like an indelible burn, became a symbol of the beginning of the worst crisis in the artist's life. The reason? Historical allegations of child sexual abuse from the 1980s, an unimaginable stain, utterly contrary to the pure and moral image he had built over 6 decades. In the blink of an eye, the name Cliff Richard was no longer mentioned alongside his resounding hit songs or his respected knighted image. Instead, it was associated with the heaviest words, with heart-wrenching questions of doubt echoing in every corner of society. How could a man revered as a moral icon, a steadfast Christian, someone who always shunned scandal, become entangled in such horrific accusations? The faith of millions of fans who had followed and supported him for decades instantly turned to dust. The shock and bewilderment quickly transformed into public judgment, a cruel witch hunt in the media. The press, led by the BBC, relentlessly exploited every tiny detail, every anonymous testimony, every baseless rumor, creating a colossal storm of public opinion that drowned out all reason and truth. The public was sharply divided into 2 factions. One desperately tried to protect their idol to the very end, clinging to beautiful memories, while the other was ready to condemn him even before the investigation concluded, trusting absolutely in what the media reported. The police investigation dragged on for over 2 years, a long and dark period that felt like a century to Cliff Richard. Each passing day was a mental torture, an invisible shackle tightening around his soul. He was harshly interrogated, his previously private life meticulously scrutinized, every relationship, every trip, all mercilessly dug up. He had to live in extreme fear that his honor, career, and entire life would be permanently destroyed by accusations he vehemently denied. The feeling of being utterly wronged, deeply misunderstood, and betrayed by the very public and media he had devoted his life to weighed on him like a colossal rock, crushing all his will to live. Every whisper, every doubtful glance, every pointing finger from those who once cheered him became an unbearable burden. The image of the gentle, exemplary boy next door was shattered beyond recognition, replaced by the figure of an old, haggard man with eyes filled with profound sadness, fighting alone to reclaim his innocence. It was an uneven battle, where an individual, even a legend, had to face the colossal machinery of a slow legal system and relentless media pressure, without ever being convicted, without any concrete evidence publicly disclosed. He was suspended in limbo between truth and accusation, his reputation severely damaged simply because an investigation was ongoing, a societal verdict already rendered even before the court spoke. Terrible consequences and a painful, sad ending. In June 2016, after more than 2 grueling years, which felt like a century in a whirlwind of earthly hell, a faint light finally emerged. The Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, officially announced that they would not be prosecuting Cliff Richard due to insufficient evidence. A collective sigh of relief spread, not just for him but for his loyal fans who had watched anxiously. This should have been a moment of liberation, a time for a man to have his honor fully restored, for him to shed the burden and return to a normal life. But for Cliff Richard, it marked the beginning of a new, deeply painful chapter, an irreparable, sad ending, because the scars from the accusations and the prolonged investigation had become profoundly etched, not only on his reputation but deep within his very soul. Mentally, Cliff Richard endured a crisis so profound that it utterly exhausted him, physically and mentally. More than 800 days and nights lived in the shadow of suspicion, of public judgment from every direction, was an unimaginable torment. He had to face the terrifying fear of losing everything. The illustrious career meticulously built with sweat and tears, a lifetime's accumulated wealth, and most importantly, the boundless trust and affection of the public, something more precious than all fame and fortune, which he had spent his entire life cultivating and nurturing. The humiliation of seeing his image paraded on national television, of having his private home raided and searched by police like a despicable criminal, inflicted deep and lasting psychological wounds. He admitted that he had lost significant weight, could not sleep soundly, and constantly lived in a state of anxiety and ever-present obsession. "I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from," he once shared, his voice choked in a rare interview, his eyes reflecting weariness and profound sorrow. "I didn't know if I could continue, if I still had the strength to fight, or if I just wanted to disappear forever." The tears streaming down his once radiant face were the clearest proof of the immense burden that an accusation, even unproven, could place upon an individual, even if that person was a legend. The impact on Cliff Richard's career and public image was an equally heartbreaking tragedy, a wound slow to heal, no matter how much time passed. Although he made every effort to return to the stage, release new albums, and hold concerts, the spotlight was no longer as complete as it once was. A layer of doubt always lingered in the minds of a segment of the audience, and even though he was legally cleared, the shadow of the accusation still loomed, somewhat obscuring the brilliance of a legend. Lucrative contracts, invitations to major events, or prestigious television shows perhaps no longer came as easily as before, as if an invisible barrier had been erected. His relationship with the media, especially the BBC, the entity that broadcast the raid on his home, also became extremely tense, leading to a prolonged and arduous legal battle. He courageously sued and won against the BBC for invasion of privacy, but that legal victory, while bringing a certain degree of justice and a not insignificant compensation, could not entirely soothe the bitterness or fully restore his untarnished reputation. Money cannot buy back peace of mind or the tormented years. It was a steep price for a truth exposed in a hasty and ill-considered manner, a scar forever etched into the history of his career, a reminder of a dark period he would never wish to recall. Cliff Richard's story is also a painful and profound reminder of the fragility of reputation in an age of exploding information, where an accusation, even if unproven or false, can irrevocably destroy a person's life. His case ignited fierce societal debates about journalistic ethics, about the privacy rights of accused individuals before a final court verdict, and about the immense pressure a celebrity faces when relentlessly scrutinized and judged by the media, turning them into sacrificial lambs for a thirst for sensational news. I had to fight not only to regain my personal honor, but also to assert my right to live a normal life, my right to be protected from blatant invasion, he said in a deeply emotional interview. My life is no longer the same. A part of me died in that process, and I don't think it can ever fully revive. Although I've been cleared, I can't get back the innocence I lost. It was a sad ending that came not from career failure or a lack of fan affection, but from the horrific devastation of a legal and media storm. Though he still stands firm, still sings, and still dedicates himself to music, Cliff Richard is no longer the Cliff Richard of old, the carefree, innocent artist with a radiant smile and a flawless image. He has become a symbol of a victim, a man who lost his innocence and peace because of what happened. And perhaps that is the most painful wound that even time can hardly heal completely. It reminds us that behind the spotlight and radiant smiles, the lives of celebrities also contain silent tragedies and a price that is not small, sometimes even their entire life and soul. Cliff Richard's journey, from the dazzling heights of fame to the abyss of unjust accusations, is a heartbreaking yet haunting tale of the fragility of reputation and the devastating power of public opinion. He stood firm on the throne of British music for decades, a symbol of a perfect boy next door with a friendly smile and an unblemished career. But then, in a fateful moment in 2014, the storm of accusations struck, crushing that image and plunging him into a struggle for survival to reclaim his innocence. Though Cliff Richard was ultimately legally cleared, it was not a complete victory. His sad ending was not a career demise or public oblivion, but a deep, unhealable scar in his soul and a part of his reputation that was permanently tainted. He lost his peace, his innocence, and a part of himself in the relentless machinery of investigation and public judgment. The compensation, though substantial, could never buy back the sleepless nights, the tormenting anxieties, or fully restore the shaken trust. His life was no longer the same, forever bearing the mark of a tragedy he did not deserve to endure. Cliff Richard's story is a powerful and bitter reminder for modern society. It raises thorny questions about the role and responsibility of the media in reporting allegations, especially when they involve a person's honor before a final court ruling. It exposes the dangers of cancel culture, where an individual can be condemned and convicted based solely on unverified accusations, causing irreversible damage. Ultimately, it demonstrates that even the brightest, most beloved stars can become victims of forces beyond their control. Cliff Richard still stands on stage, still sings, and still dedicates himself to music, but that voice, though still powerful, perhaps now carries a touch of contemplation, a hint of indescribable sadness. He was cleared, but the price paid was too steep. It is the tragedy of an icon and a valuable lesson for all of us about fairness, about the responsibility of information, and about the compassion needed when judging a person's life.